If you're a graphic designer, your job isn't really to just draw. If you're a software engineer, your job isn't coding. And if you're a surgeon, your job isn't cutting. AI is changing the way we're all going to be doing work, and it's going to make the doing less important than the deciding. In the book, The E-Myth Revisited, they discuss the concept of the technician. The technician is the person who has the hands-on work, baking the pies and writing the code. But they often lack the top-down insight, and they lack the insight into how their work actually applies to the business as a whole. A primary cause of small business failure is often a lack of understanding of how to apply their technical skills to a real business and how to generate value from that skill. Technicians often build a job for themselves rather than a real business, and they get trapped in the day-to-day demands more so than how to actually capture value from what they're trying to sell. So if the business depends entirely on the technician's technical aptitude, it will probably not succeed. So in this era of nearly unlimited leverage, where code and writing can be replicated infinitely with no marginal cost, the decision-making will become more important than the actual execution. In software engineering, writing code is a lower leverage activity. Much of the code itself can be written by junior engineers, but someone usually needs to tell them what needs to be written. Will Larson wrote that staff engineer is not a senior plus more. It's really more about deciding how things get done and using influence without authority as more of a soft power role. Managers get trapped in just trying to do more and more, but they still need someone to tell them what more to do, which is really the job of the staff engineer, to decide what actually gets done. Engineers get hired to solve problems for a business and create business value, not to solve problems for their own sake. Engineers often chase after the coolest, most technical and interesting ideas that they can, but their job isn't really to solve those technical problems. Their job is to create business value. And sometimes that can lead to chasing down technical problems, but more often it's a simpler and a little bit more boring challenge. In The Shape of Design, Frank Camara wrote, "It is easier to recognize failures of technique than those of strategy or purpose, and simpler to ask, how do I paint this tree, than to answer, why does this painting need a tree in it?" Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, noted that he makes as few decisions as he possibly can, not as many as he can, because he wants the value and impact of those decisions to be as great as he can make them. So there are three ways out of being pigeonholed into only being a technician. You can either be a system builder, a technical leader, or a manager/founder. The first way out is to be a system builder, wherein you evolve from doing the work to planning out a system for accomplishing that work. You can replace yourself with a series of lower skilled people or AI robots who can achieve that work for you. So you go from asking what work needs to be done to what does the business require. The second path is to become a technical leader, like an engineer at the staff level or higher. Here you start to become more of a technical glue, wherein you bring all the people together and kind of delegate tasks as needed. Another common facet is being asked to influence without explicit authority. You can't directly order people what to do, but you need to lead them. And personally, this is where I'm having a lot of challenges right now in my career. I have responsibilities over a broad set of things, but I can't explicitly order people who aren't my direct reports. But instead, you have to get everyone to gel together and play nice. And so steering people together and getting them to focus on a particular issue or work towards a common goal can be very challenging. But really the challenge is, how do you get people to recognize their own responsibilities and not push it onto others? That sometimes can require calling in people at the VP level to straighten things out, which can be a little intimidating, but navigating organizational charts is a pretty big part of technical leadership. A lot of people shy away from trying to play the politics game, but it's a very important thing to do in life, to be able to gather influence without actually having command. But if you want to order people around, you can be a manager. It's usually a little more straightforward than the other two, but it's also a lot trickier, because now by assuming responsibility for people, you're not just responsible for their output, you're responsible for keeping them around and keeping them at least kind of happy, or at least pretending to be in front of other people. One of the bigger distinctions between being a founder and a manager in a larger company is a founder usually needs to retain the ability to go hands-on with the work when necessary, whereas a manager is usually discouraged from doing that in a large tech company. Managers get hired for a reason, and that reason is usually not so they can keep doing the work they were doing as an individual contributor, but also order people around. Instead, they need to find the way to unify the team and get them to drive towards a certain goal. Now, while there are some roles like surgeon that never really go beyond being a pure technician, I think those are going to be few and far between in the future. And while they won't exactly be necessarily completely replaced by AI, the number of opportunities available to them, I think, is going to shrink. For instance, it's going to be a lot easier to have a surgeon supervising a robot performing a surgery than to have them doing all of their own operations by hand. And that'll increase the level of access to healthcare people can have. But it's going to probably mean there are fewer genuine opportunities for surgeons in the future. It is also important to keep in mind that you learn how to make a decision through doing. You have to develop your own decision tree for a particular circumstance, and you can't develop judgment without execution. You can only shift the ratio over time. One thing I do worry about is the lack of entry-level job opportunities in the future. People need to get through job experience somehow, and if you don't have the entry-level job experience, you aren't going to develop the on-the-ground insights that you need to be a higher-level performer. So you can apply all this depending on where you are in your career. If you're early on in your career, focusing on hands-on execution is really the only way to develop the judgment that you need to be a higher-level thinker. You need to focus on that hands-on experience. If you're lucky enough to get an entry-level job, then you can use that experience going forward. The best way to think about things is how decisions get made. Always ask yourself why your manager is making those decisions and what you might be able to gain from learning about that process. You might not have all the insight needed into how decisions are getting made, but you can ask yourself what are the impact of those decisions and deciding what trade-offs might have gone into it. You can learn by inferring how decisions got made from those observations and start to develop a sense for those decision making. When you get to the mid-career phase, when you transition into the mid-career, you start to worry less about how a task gets done and more about whether it's the right task to work on. You can practice forming your own decisions and inviting feedback from others on how to develop your judgment. This is also the point where you need to decide which of the 3 escape paths you'll choose to be a system-level builder, a technical leader, or a manager. It's good to periodically ask yourself if you're stuck in technician mode. Here are some warning signs to check. You measure your value by hours worked or volume produced. You avoid ambiguous problems for clear execution tasks. You measure your value by hours worked or volume produced. You avoid ambiguous problems for clear execution tasks. You defer to authority rather than forming your own opinions. Your business or role can't function without your personal daily input. So there's a clear pattern across professions. Mastering them starts with execution, but leads to diagnosis. No matter where you're at in the journey, you need to be clear about your goals. If you're in the early career stage, you can focus on execution, but you need to get in as many reps as you can and start to work that pattern recognition to learn the decision-making process. And if you're getting closer to the middle of your career, and if you're getting closer to mid-career, you need to decide which of the 3 escape paths you'll choose and start working on your leadership and technical problem-solving abilities. And if you're getting closer to the middle of your career, you need to decide which of the 3 escape paths you'll choose and work on your technical leadership and people management skills. Start working on your leadership and technical problem-solving abilities, and you'll be more prepared for when those lower-level roles get automated away.